What is something you did long ago that your parents still bring up today? Ugh. When I dated an interesting guy for a bit in high school, he was really into swords. Every new guy I meet, the first thing they say is, "But how many swords does he have?" They think they're pretty damn funny. If he had enough time to go out with you, he wasn't studying the blade enough. Throwing a dart into my brother's bare foot because I convinced myself I was good enough to throw it exactly between his toes. I'd like to take a moment and appreciate the amount of confidence your brother has in you. His comment didn't specify that his brother was a willing participant. I like to think OP was confident enough to go for a moving target. A few years ago I was eating dinner with my mom and brother and started choking on a piece of food. Couldn't breathe, couldn't speak. I fell out of my chair and writhed on the floor before managing to dislodge the food. The entire time my mom and brother laughed because they thought I was joking, and then yelled at me for not letting them know I was choking. Almost 4 years later, if I even remotely choke on anything, they remind me to fall onto the floor so that they know I'm being serious. When my brother was really little, he was really into WWF and WWE. He wanted to be a wrestler and he started calling himself the Muscle Man, but he couldn't pronounce muscle, so it came out Muffin. We still call him the Muffin Man. He's 27. My mother was in labor with me for 1 hour. When I was a lazy teenager, my mother liked to joke that I was in such a hurry to be born that I have been catching my breath ever since. Her water broke at 10:55 am and I was there by 11:55 am. She also liked to joke that it went that fast because I wanted to be on time for lunch. Opposite. Back in the 1990s, my mother constantly gave me tons of shit for buying Pokemon cards. They'll be worthless in a few years, etc., etc. It got to the point where she confiscated my collection permanently because I got grounded for something school related. Years later, whilst in college, I returned home and rummaged through my old belongings and found my old Pokemon card collection. Sold a few different cards for a total of about $3,000, then used that to buy her a really nice Mother's Day present. I make sure to bring it up to her at least once per year. When I was in elementary school, my mom was talking to my teacher about paying for a field trip. We were a low-income family, and I decided to tell her that the budget's so tight it squeaks, I'll never live it down. I will also never live down my kindergarten yearbook picture. I was subtly flipping off the camera and it got published, unedited. It's my family's favorite picture of me. When I was a couple months old, I was being really fussy and my parents didn't know why. I think I was naked on a changing table, and then I sort of curled up and unloaded a massive amount of projectile poop on the wall. My parents think it's hilarious, but I just find the story to be rather embarrassing and gross. 5 years old, went to Dairy Queen. It was August, and as I sat in the back seat enjoying my dilly bar, it was melting faster than I could eat it. We were at a light when my dad noticed the mess I was making on his Thunderbird seats. He reached back and held out his hand and said, "Gimme that." So I did. Plopped it in his hand, splattering melted ice cream all over the car. Flipped a four-wheeler by going backwards down a hill. Broke my leg in 3 spots and crushed my growth plate. Dad specifically said not to do that. To top it off, the I went to told me it was just a sprained ankle and that I could walk. I tried walking. My leg complete collapsed and all I could hear was bone hitting bone. Rub some dirt on it and walk off. When I was real young, maybe 3 or 4, my family took a trip to visit more family in Vietnam. Had to poop and couldn't open the door to the bathroom for whatever reason. Ended up taking a shit on the stairs and just leaving it there for my family to find. This was not what I expected to see on this post XD. Backstory: when I had moved to a new town, there was this kid and a group of his friends who constantly harassed me and called me Jew boy. It didn't bother me, and I'm not even Jewish. The kids did attack me several times though. Story: went to a family reunion several months after moving to the new town, only to find out I was distantly related to the main aggressor bully of the group. We played touch football in a large group of people, and he was on the other team. I was running the ball down the field when this kid got in front of me and said, "Looks like I'll be the one to take down Jew boy." I lost my shit. I threw the football down and tackled him, just punching him until my knuckles were sore. I'd never attacked anyone like that. I had to be pulled off him by several adults, and my parents were basically mortified by my actions. One time when I was a little boy, we had to go on a trip to somewhere. I can't remember the place, and we couldn't find me or my sister's shoes. My parents looked everywhere and found them under my sister's pillow. Somehow they came to the logical conclusion that I must have hidden mine and my sister's shoes under her pillow. Why would I hide my own shoes? For that day on, whenever something goes missing, they always joke that I hid it. My older brother and I unwrapped some Christmas presents to see what they were, then wrapped them up again. We were maybe 8 and 10. You'd think we lit the goddamn house on fire or something the way my mom talks about it every Christmas. I'm 37. When I was 3-4 years old, I had this tactic I used on my dad whenever he was punishing me for stuff, where I would tell him, "Me digest gonzo," which basically translates to "you called me gonzo." I don't know how I came up with that. I did like the Muppets and gonzo was my favorite, but whenever I said that, my dad was unable to hold back his laughter and he would go a lot easier on me. To this day he still brings it up and actually calls me gonzo as a joke, but he doesn't know why he found it so funny. He just did. My dad was changing my diaper and I said, "Daddy, get a life." I was so young I had no idea what I was saying, but I was probably mimicking my 11 or 12-year-old brother. He told me he responded. I had one before I started changing diapers. They like to tell about the time when I was a little kid running around inside the bank lobby while mom was at the teller window. I spotted a long row of light switches and turned them all off at once, causing the bank to be in darkness. That, in turn, triggered an alarm and called the cops. People thought the bank was being robbed. I was a weird kid, so let's see. I was under 2 when I got on the dining room table and took a shot of Tabasco sauce straight from the bottle. I didn't like it. Between 2 and 5, tried cat food and dog food. They taste like cheap, stale meat flavored crackers for the record. Ate sugar straight from the sugar container and blamed the Holy Ghost for it. I don't know how they sussed that one out. At 7 I was visiting an aunt. We were walking down the street, and I was reading the storefront signs out loud. Apparently one store was Ideal Drugs Pharmacy. I said Ideal Drugs. There was a delay between I and Deal. Somewhere between 8 and 10. I was doing dishes by myself in the kitchen. My mom was attempting to make a large batch of homemade yogurt. For some reason I decided to put soap bubbles on top of the yogurt. No, I don't know what I was thinking. I was the reason for a new school rule in kindergarten. I was tired, so I decided it was a good idea to walk home. Never mind that I had no idea where home was. I was tired and being lost wasn't going to stop me. They caught me just as I left the gate, and from that day forward it was school policy to lock the gates to the school during the school day. As far as I know, that rule is still in place decades later. My mum and someone else were talking about drugs, in a frowned upon manner, and I piped up all confident saying I knew exactly what drugs were actually. My mum was like, "Alright then, what are they?" So I said that they were little furry things that live in the woods. 18 years later and it's a fucking banger for them whenever the subject of drugs comes up. In 6th grade I convinced my teacher I couldn't do homework because we were renovating our house. True. And were living in a tent in the yard until it was done enough for us. Got caught a few months later, during parent-teacher conferences, when the teacher inquired about whether it was getting too cold. Still gets used to indicate how untrustworthy I am. I'm in my 30s.